Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, fellow group members, dear classmates, course greetings, Professor. We are here to present our final year exams presentation under the course Human Resource Management. And the topic we are going to be presenting on is Look Out Ahead, case study. Okay, I'll prolong with the presentation of the group members. First group member, Igwe Okereke Ikpo. Second group member, myself, Glenn Lenyoy Fontintin. Third group member, Jam Jude Ngong. And the fourth and last group member, Kuke Belten Bowie. We'll move to the first part of our presentation, which is titled Look Out Ahead. That is the basic concept. Here, it's a storyline of a company called the Genco, which has Tom Miller as head of administrative service division or manager in this company, and has to employ some colleagues or workers under him who have to help prioritize the company's objectives. So we are going to see Tom Miller secured a job as head of administrative service division in Genco with 20 years working experience as manager. Rodney James was the first employee Tom hired. He assumed the position of supervisor with little knowledge of the post. His predecessor was caught stealing money. Tom was only happy for Rodney's new position without minding his ill service. Tom was frustrated due to Rodney's inability when the Genco system upgrade came on the way. The new system demands for new budget year. Tom had warned Rodney against the budget, preparatory and staffing plan. Tom being heavily occupied, no one to back up Rodney, Tom thought that this lack of backup resulted to Rodney's delegation problems. Tom tried to correct Rodney on that, but all efforts proved abortive. I can also explain this, like, on the other hand, Tom Miller moved to the administrative service division of the Genco after 20 years experience managing procurement and logistics in the military. In his new position, he was responsible for purchasing, documents, storage, and the mail room. After 3 years, Tom had the entire operation running smoothly. Rodney James supervised the 8 employees in the mail room. Rodney was the first employee Tom hired after joining Genco. Rodney's predecessor had been caught stealing money, and Tom took a chance in promoting Rodney into the position. His gamble paid off. That is, Tom was pleased with how Rodney emerged as a supervisor, even if Rodney tended to not delegate as well as he should. Tom saw that Rodney spent too much time fighting fires and too little time planning. Not planning effectively was a major failure in Tom's mind. Tom had been extensively trained in the work on planning. To him, planning was second nature. Tom's frustration with Rodney's poor planning skills was coming to a head during the current systems conversion now underway at Genco. The new system promised a drastic reduction in the flow of paper at Genco. As, as Tom thought back on it, he was generally pleased with the results. Rodney emerged as a very capable supervisor. He was good with his employees even if he was not so effective as a delegator. Because of his tendency to do too much of their work himself, he continually fighting fires. That is, he continually doing part of the job, leaving the other part undone. And we can also see that the other part, which was planning, he was not really doing much of the planning. Lack of planning and foresight was something that Tom could just not understand. Effectively anticipating future conditions and making plans accordingly was a learned instinct in the military. Rodney's inability to make even the most simple plans was like scratching chalk on a blackboard to Tom. Indeed, Tom was good at making such plans. He knew how to make forecasts of projects, milestones, estimate budgets, requirements, perform workload estimates, create controls, prepare planning documents and report, and execute a host of related techniques. To him, it was second nature. Tom's frustration with Rodney's poor planning skills was coming to a head with the system conversion now undergo at Genco. This conversion was a system-wide process of changing from manual, paper-based operating system to one that was an electronic, area networked, integrated database system. In short, the system's conversion that was to be fully operational in 2 months meant a drastic reduction in paper, and this meant a major change for the mail room. So here, Tom had to guide Rodney James, or to let him know of what this task of or this position of supervisor was all about, which would help him do his job at the Genco. So thanks for listening, and I'm going to hand over the floor to my group mate to continue with the presentation.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, fellow mates. Greetings, dear professor. Thank you, Glenn Liwani Kwafutintin, for handing me over the floor to continue the presentation. At this point, we are going to answer the case study question. Is this a disciplinary or coaching problem from Tom? This part seeks to explain and to answer the problematic from the case study text. We have done it in a summary manner, but in explanation we shall give some deep insights into the problematics. We have to first of all know that this problem can be considered as a coaching problem based on the fact that Tom has graded in planning, while on the other side Rodney has poor mastery in planning. Remember from the text, we were told that Rodney was promoted to the position of this supervisor by Tom, which was, according to the text, Tom was gambling. Tom just had to place confidence in Rodney without any formal education on the task. So what we got from the text is that Rodney hadn't any formal education on the performance of that task. However, Tom was satisfied to an extent with the performance of Rodney in the accomplishment of his tasks, but for the fact that Rodney had some difficulties in delegation powers and in planning appropriately. We all know that things that are not natural to us, we tend to avoid and do more of things that we find natural. Considering the fact that Rodney didn't have any formal knowledge in planning and in delegation of powers, or in a nutshell, in supervision, Rodney tended to focus more on what he was naturally gifted in, overlooking the other part of the task, which was delegating powers and doing a proper planning. However, this resulted to avoiding Rodney's from some of the tasks he had found uncomfortable for him. At this point, it is necessary to differentiate between a disciplinary problem and a coaching problem. A disciplinary problem can be considered as that wherein the employee can do the work. The employee had what is necessary for him or her to do the task, but deliberately deny doing the task. In that case, disciplinary measures can be taken against that employee who deliberately refuses to do the task, in spite of the fact that he or she has what it takes to do the task. Meanwhile, a coaching problem can be considered to be a situation where the employee cannot do the task, but if he is told what to do, if he is directed on what to do, he will do it. Therefore, the employee's knowledge in accomplishing the task is limited and needs to be stimulated by either a fellow employee or a superior employee through coaching. Therefore, in this case, we see that Rodney has the will to carry out the task. Rodney has the desire to fulfill the task, but due to lack of knowledge in a particular field, which is planning and probably delegation of powers, he comes short of the potentials to accomplish the task. In this case scenario, the best possible measure for Tom to apply on Rodney is the coaching method. Tom needs to do some coaching to stimulate Rodney the anxiety to do that which naturally he is not comfortable doing, and the task will be accomplished. At this point, I'll hand over the microphone to my group mate, Igwe Okereke, to explain the second problematic and possibly conclude. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, my able prof and my fellow classmates. I have to continue from where my colleague stopped. The heading: outline and describe a coaching process Tom should follow in working with Rodney. From this content, Tom was faced with two coaching tasks: how to help Rodney work with his new assistant manager, and also to teach him planning skills. From the onset, we learned that Rodney had no knowledge of supervisory activity. He has been in the mailroom for a good 2 years. An opportunity called. He was promoted due to his predecessor stole money and was fired. He was doing the work very well, but on the other hand, her major problem was lack of planning skill. He was unable to do any good planning and any good budget. So, if Tom has to help, he should start from the planning skill and also to make him, Rodney, work with his new assistant, because there was a gap there. Rodney was the only one having grade 12, while others are all grade 8 communists. So there was a breach there, or a gap, which need to be closed. Starting with planning skill. Planning skills and other related tasks on which Tom need to work with Rodney. Tom should teach Rodney the basic skill and assign him to a progressive work to apply the skills for him, Tom, to review and criticize constructively. This coaching will be based on manpower planning and budgeting. I think that is the best way to train him practically. When he applies such method, I believe he will make it. And the steps are as follows. 1. Converting that impact into manpower needs. When he did do that, I believe it will be useful to the company. When he converts all the impact into manpower need. Then assessing the impact of the system's conversion and the mailroom's workload, bringing out time to assess the impact of the system's conversion and the mailroom workload. Then creating a personal and organizational link plan to make change in staffing. Like I said earlier, he is a grade 12 holder while others are 8. There is a gap there, which means there should be a link to bring in that personal and organizational link in order to change the staffing method. Then preparing a budget to show the revisions in manpower needs, which means he has to face his fears by helping him to prepare a budget to show the revision in manpower need. Tom should closely work with Rodney. He's not just leaving him, he should keep an eye on him, work closely with him always. He could also give Rodney time on each task, which means anytime a task is assigned to him, he should time him. Let's say you are going to do this in 2 hours, or you say 30 minutes. Then monitor him and see if he can meet the target at the right time. A written material should also be provided for Rodney for more explanation on the process, especially organizational material that will help him in preparing the budget. I believe material tools is also necessary to help him to build his knowledge in organizational aspect of the work by preparing the budget very well. At his free time, he can go through them, not only when he's at work. I believe the material will go a long way in assisting him. Each assignment given to Rooney in mail room should be inspected. It should be inspected upon completion, which means if an assignment is given to him, once he finishes, Tom should come and inspect it to see if he did it well or wrong. Through this, he learns a skill while completing each task, which means one task is capable of teaching him one thing at a time. The next, working with the new assistant manager. Tom, making sure that Rodney is working effectively with the new assistant manager will also help. Not just to leave him like that, to make sure that both of them are working effectively. Total cooperation between the two will ease developing his supervisory skills. When they are engaged in corporate work or communication or assisting each other, I believe the supervisory skills he needs will be developing. Tom should focus much on such issues like clarifying duties and authority. Most of the time, some workers don't even know their duties, not to talk about how to express their power or authority. Delegating responsibilities, which means responsibility must be given to him. Supporting and training new assistant manager and developing a good working relationship with his new assistant. By doing so, When he is training new ones, he's bringing them close. That personal relationship will be there. The gap we seize. Tom should open his arms to welcome some issues from Rooney and on regular basis. Tom, in the other hand, should also make himself available to always receive questions or problems or suggestions which they will tackle together. When Rodney enumerates his problems, he can always provide solution to them. Tom should also carry the new assistant manager along to learn his own opinion on how things are going on in the company. Believe with this, Tom will make a very good headway in solving his problem in the company. Thank you for listening. Bye.